So, you want to get into RC drifting. Maybe you've seen a few videos on the internet, and these cars look really cool and really fun. Your first thought is go to the front page of the internet. That's right, Reddit. Maybe you could use the search bar, or just like everyone else, create your own thread. Let's ask the world, what should my first RC drift car be? Now let's see what happens when you type that in. Instead of taking the time to make a post, there's a search bar up here, and you can simply type in first car. Anything correlated to that, and you're going to get thousands of answers. And begin to do research. Hey guys, welcome back to Shredcraft RC. I'm Cam, and I wanted to touch on a subject that I get asked all the time. That is, what is the best car to start with? Now with RC drifting, it's a hobby, and so many opinions and so many suggestions are kind of subjective on what you're looking to do and what you're looking to accomplish. There's a lot of different aspects to this hobby where I think everyone's perspectives are a little bit different, so all the information out there on the internet is vastly different and varying in opinions on what car to get. I would say the first side of things that we should touch on, the toy grade style of RC vehicle. And normally these are anywhere from your 1/24th to 1/18th scale cars that are fun to rip around your kitchen or maybe your garage floor, but they're not necessarily something that you'd go to a track and be competitive with. That's not really what my channel's about, and I tend to focus more on hobby grade cars and tend to base all my experience and information that I provide off 1/10th scale RC drift cars. If you guys followed some of my previous videos, you would have seen this chassis. Now while it looks very cool, has all the blinged out anodized aluminum and carbon chassis, this is not what I would suggest if you were just getting into RC drifting and picking up your first car. Well, the price point is attractive at only $130, something like that, and you can get all this stuff. What I found is that this leads to a lot more headaches than enjoyment on track, and you do need an extensive amount of knowledge to even get that car running on track. What I am going to suggest that we'll do a little price breakdown here in a little bit. This is the Yokomo Rookie Drift 2.0. I've done a bunch of videos on setting alignment, using budget electronics, and things of that nature on this channel, and I'll link some of those up here. In my opinion, this is the best, most budget-friendly RC rear-wheel drive drift car that you can get for the money and go out to your local track or out into the street and have a good time. Now you might be saying, what makes this standard plastic chassis better than this blinged out aluminum chassis? And the fact of the matter is, Yokomo is a company that has been making RC cars for years and years and years. There is an extensive amount of knowledge, research, and development that's gone into the geometry and all the components that are included in this low entry priced model. Compared to something like this, where these designers have taken something and they copied pictures or even stolen the molds from other RC drift car companies, slapped it all onto one chassis, and decided that this was a product that they were going to sell. Now with Yokomo, you have years of racing experience on top of years of drifting experience. And for a mere $200, you can pick up this entire chassis kit, not including the electronics or these bumpers that I have on here right now. But other than that, this car is completely 100% stock. Let's go over some of the factors that make this one of the best options that you can pick up for your first 1/10th scale rear-wheel drive RC drift car. My quick points on why the Rookie Drift 2.0 is a far superior option compared to a even Tamiya TT02. So this is another popular option that I see people talking about on the forums is, what about doing a TT02 conversion? So at the bare minimum, you're going to be spending $120 on a chassis kit. And this will include brushed ESC and a brushed motor, not the electronics that you would need to go drifting. On top of that, you're going to need the rear-wheel drive drift conversion for angle to give the car the proper amount of steering angle to even get it drifting. If you look at the Yeah Racing high-end kit here, it's $259. So you're already way over the price of a Rookie Drift 2.0. Even at $60, That's still going to put you around $200 for the bare minimum chassis components to get this car drifting. With the Rookie Drift 2.0, you have full adjustable turnbuckles, front and rear. You have full ball bearings. You have adequate shocks. You even have a gear differential in the transmission. For those simple facts there, that is already a much better platform, considering that this is a rear-wheel drive specific chassis that is meant to go drifting. So in my mind, the Rookie Drift 2.0 is the best car that you can get as a beginner to get out there and have a good time drifting, especially if this is your first time getting into the hobby and you don't want to be spending a bunch of money on top of figuring out how to tune, align, and set up TT02s. And I'm not saying that these are bad cars at all. TT02 was my first car that I ever got, and I tried to make it drift. With how much complication and how much effort, on top of the amount of parts that you need to put into a TT02 to get it to be anywhere close to what a Rookie Drift 2.0 is, after having experience with this car and still driving it completely stock. I have tons of use on this thing, driven it outside, I've jumped this thing, put rubber tires on it, slid it around parking lots, even I'm doing my outdoor drift video series with this chassis. Those are kind of the points in my experience with this car and why I can recommend it. Now, the other question that I get asked all the time is, what would I choose if I was picking out my first car? The Rev D RDX or the RD 2.0? And based just on price alone, I'm gonna have to say the Rookie Drift 2.0. The RDX is $80 more than the RD 2.0 and comes with fixed links, a locked rear differential, and not a lot of adjustability out of the box. Now, this is a tough question to answer because this is my absolute hands down favorite car to drive out of any of the many RC drift cars I've owned and driven over the years. If you can notice, I've put a lot of time, effort, and money into this chassis with a bunch of aftermarket components. Now it's kind of stripped down right now because I have some new electronics coming that I'll be doing a video in the future of getting this car set up and dialed in with a new electronic setup, giving me the chance to move my old electronics onto the Rookie Drift 2.0, giving this thing a more even comparison using similar electronics between both chassis setups. On the RDX, I've even gone as far as putting Yokomo toe blocks, arms, suspension, all that stuff. So there is hundreds and hundreds of dollars of aftermarket parts that I've invested into this car to get it to drive exactly how I want it to drive. And then with the Rookie Drift, it's still all completely stock plastic components. There is no upgrades on this car at this time, but that's what I want to do, is kind of upgrade this thing and get it more to a track competition level drift car. So this is a hobby, right? We always want to customize things, make them our own, put our own little unique touch on them, say that we did something different, say, you know, show the world that we're not all made out of the same cookie cutter mold, just like I did with this car. I've added my own custom touches, you know, using Cerakote to paint some pieces, making my own chassis for this thing, all the cool little aspects that make this hobby so fun. So, of course, when you're getting into it, the other posts that I see on the forums all the time are, what are the best first mods I should get for my car? It's a very subjective question because there's so many different parts, there's so many different things that you can do to these cars to make them drive differently, to make them feel different, and to kind of improve in performance, but also, in my mind, take away some of the performance with some of these parts I see people put on their cars. On this thing, I'm going to kind of share my thoughts in a few electronics that I'll be adding. Not only make it my own, but improve performance, and then put a little bling factor onto it to make it stand out from just being this ordinary blank canvas of a plastic chassis. Let me show you some of the stuff that I'm taking from my Rev D RDX and putting on to the Rookie Drift 2.0. So when I first started with the Rookie Drift 2.0, I was running this motor and ESC combo. This is the Tamiya Superstock RZ brushed motor and a Hobbywing 1080 G2 ESC. So a brushed electronic setup is going to be the most budget-friendly electronic setup to get you drifting, and it does work. I even ran a 3S battery through this thing to get a little more RPM out of it and keep up with some of the faster cars at our track. It works, it can work, it's a good budget-friendly option, and it will get you drifting. But I've also made a list over here that I can kind of go over with. If you're wanting to go brushless out of the bag, a ESC that I've used in the past and that has worked great is the Hobbywing 10BL120 censored brushless motor. Now if you take a look here on Hobbywing's website, they are $60, which is a great budget-friendly option to get you running. And paired with that, they also have their motor. So their 3650 censored brushless motor, the G2, is $54.99. So that is a great budget-friendly option. For not much money, you have a great motor and a great ESC to get you drifting. For this Rookie Drift 2.0, I'm going to be switching my XD10 Pro ESC and D10 10.5 brushless motor onto this chassis, and I think having this whole red factor onto this is going to look really good. So I'll be able to give you guys some tips on how to kind of customize the chassis with the electronics, give it a little bling factor. Besides the motor and the ESC, we need to talk about servos and gyros. The other most important factor in making sure that you're gonna have a good time for your first time RC drifting. I see a lot of people going with a cheap servo and a cheap gyro, and they'll give you a headache. I'll tell you right now. I've used them before and I've had problems, and it's one of those things that gives you the feeling and the sensitivity and how the car drives and how the car feels, especially since in RC drifting we rely on gyros so much to control how the car feels. Now for my track car, I'm just using the cheap Yokomo servo. This is the SPD 204, I believe. It's just their cheap, like $60 servo. It's giving me the best feel. I had the RSST, but paired with the Revox and the tune, I didn't really like how it felt. It almost felt like it slowed my steering down. But the Yokomo servo paired with the Revox Rev D gyro has felt great to me, something I really feel like I can be accurate with. And now for a good budget level servo and gyro, this is the AGF RC A50 BHL. I believe these are around $65. They're programmable and tunable through your computer with a little USB dongle. And then this is the infamous Yokomo V4 gyro. Again, this is the gyro I started with. This still feels great. Gives you a nice snappy transition, and I believe that these are $75 or something like that new, where the Revox is I think $100 or $110 brand new. So there is some investment into the electronics. Trust me when I say this, it makes a world of difference in how the car feels and how it performs. It's going to give you a better experience if you're just starting out drifting. Now, speaking of these mid-level kind of electronics that I have and that I've been using, you can go overboard, and a lot of people do, but you can go with an AccuVance motor and ESC setup. But I'll tell you right now that if you wanted to get the AccuVance Jarvis, however it's pronounced, that ESC is over $250 brand new. And then the Fledge motor to pair with it is $150. So you're $300-400 just into the motor and the ESC. And then I see people raving over the Futaba CD700 servo, and just for the servo alone is $270, which is more than this complete setup right here. So if you have a pro level car and you want the best feeling, the best speed, the best reaction, the best tunability, since you can tune this with S-Bus on your Futaba remote, then by all means. I'm not saying this is a bad servo. This has to be a very, very good servo for that price. But for me, I like to find the middle level, so I'm not spending thousands and thousands, but maybe $1,000 for this complete setup to get out there and drive with some of the best drivers out there. Kind of my recommendation there. And then there is also the Futaba GYD 550, and this is a gyro that I do have experience with and that I have used in the past. And if we'll take a look, it's a $130 gyro. Now I spent that money, I used it. There's a world of tuning capabilities with this thing. In the end of the day, it didn't feel as nice to me as the V4. It's all kind of relating to the electronic base that you set up. So if you have all Futaba stuff, then by all means get the AccuVance and the Futaba setup. But I've ran AccuVance, I had a rad and a fledge, and then I had S-Bus to my remote, and I spent $400 or $500 getting it all set up, but it just did not feel as nice as the Hobbywing stuff. So I went back to Hobbywing, and then I went back to my simple electronics that I know how to tune and I know how to use. I know how they feel. And then even on my track car, the Revox, that's my favorite gyro out right now. And then paired with that Yokomo servo, didn't have to do any programming or any tuning. It just feels really good. Sometimes finding that middle line, so you're not investing a whole lot, but you're still buying decent enough stuff to have a good time on track. That's a very important factor in my mind, and something that I've even gone back to a more basic setup for my own stuff. You don't need to go overboard on electronics, but you also don't want to buy the most budget cheap things you can find on Amazon. And by the way, if you guys are looking to pick up this XD10 Pro or a D10 motor, they are on sale on Hobbywing right now, and I will throw those links down in the description below. But I believe I paid like $210 for the CSC when I first got it. Now they're $189, which is a great deal. These work with a Wi-Fi programmer box. Never had an issue with it. Gives you all the power you need, turbo, boost, timing, all that stuff. And then the D10 motor, I believe these are on sale too now for like $109. So I think that's about what I paid. They were $130. Also, never had an issue with this motor. I've used it thousands of battery packs. It still works great. I can definitely recommend the Hobbywing stuff. So I'll include links to those down below. For now, I think I should get this thing dressed up, show you what it looks like with some nicer electronics, and then the Yokomo big bore shocks. Let's get a nice before shot of what this chassis looks like, and then we'll throw on the upgraded stuff and show you what it looks like after. And I'll give you a few tips on how to bling up the chassis components as well. This is a great little way to add a little flair to kind of match the electronics and color on your chassis. But these are just some simple little cap washers. And so they make them in countersunk and regular style hex bolts, but they fit in there and they give you a nice clean finish look. They're like finishing washers. You can pick up a bag of these on Amazon for super cheap. They'll dress up your chassis. So this is what it looks like before. And then I'll get some after shots once I get this stuff bolted on and give you guys some tips on like managing your wires and keeping them clean and stuff like that. Let me get to work here, throw some of this stuff on, and show you what it looks like when it's dressed up. Now check out the difference just a couple little red accents made. So if this is your first car, I can totally understand not wanting to spend a whole lot of money on the electronics or even the car, but these are kind of my recommendations on where to start in order to have the best experience possible. Remember that these aren't like a basher where you can just take it out, pull the trigger, rip it around, and just have a blast. It took me months and months of practicing and going to the track in order to get somewhat even proficient at driving. And a lot of that has to do with learning how to drive with a gyro and learning how all these electronics work together in order to give it a smooth action, along with being able to drive with other people at the track and figuring out how to drive an adequate RC drift line. I see a lot of people get discouraged and maybe put their car on the track for 5 minutes, slam into the wall a bunch of times, and then go back in and start fiddling and tuning their car. And I think sometimes from my perspective and my point of view, from my experience, it was me being nervous and going back in and thinking I was making a difference by tuning some aspects of the chassis and then going back out, when in reality it was me having difficulty with some of the lower end electronics that weren't really acting the way that they should have been acting. And once I stepped up to that kind of mid-level electronics package, it made a world of difference in my driving, in me being able to understand how the servo and gyro acted together, how the motor tune and timing and all that stuff worked, along with setting up the chassis with the right alignment. And if you guys need help with that, make sure you check out my alignment video, because from what I hear, it's helped out a bunch of people, thousands and thousands of people who have reached out and told me that they really appreciate that video because it taught them something they didn't know about chassis setup. If you're just getting into RC drifting, you're not going to be able to just pick up a chassis, set it on track, and go get doors with all the good guys at the track. It's going to take some time, but you'll get there. It just requires the seat time, or the wheel time, trigger time, whatever you want to call it, of repetition, learning how that car feels, and doing it over and over and over so that you're able to slide the car with everyone else at the track. This is me just giving my perspective and my opinion on my experience being able to have a track close by that I regularly go to, and people that I slide with regularly. So I know how they drive, they know how I drive, and we're able to have a great time. Tons of laughs, tons of smiles, tons of fun. But if you're someone who's just tuning in your garage or playing around with another friend out in the street, you don't need to take a lot of these factors as seriously as I might be taking them or other people on the internet might be taking them, because all you really need is a car. And by all means, the TT02 is a great car. I had so much fun with that thing, and if you go back to the beginning of this channel, you'll see it's all, to me, a TT02 videos. I turned it into a rally car and had a blast with it. Rips around the dirt, jumped it off some huge jumps, broke it, repaired it. It taught me how to kind of fix chassis and set chassis up. And then there's the toy grade cars. I know there's a cult following behind the LD RC little 1/18 scale car. It's a rear wheel drive car. I know people have tons of fun with those, but they're not something that I can go to the track and drive with a bunch of people who have them. But if all you have is your kitchen or your garage, by all means, that's a great car. Looks like a ton of fun. It's got some cool scale details to it, but it's not what someone on the 10 scale side of the hobby would consider a hobby grade car. That's just kind of my 2 cents. If you're trying to get into RC drifting, you can easily start with this car, and I think maybe I should tally all the prices up, because you'll be able to see if you go and buy a TT02 and expect it to drive like one of these, you're going to spend a lot more money trying to dial that thing in and figure it out. And then, you know, you'll eventually get to a point where you have one of these, a full carbon, titanium, aluminum chassis that is absolutely perfected and drives amazing. You know, there's always the hope and dream to get a Golem too. And, you know, when those things are fully hopped up, they're $5,000 plus just for the chassis. So it's kind of finding that balance point where you can mitigate having a budget set aside to spend a couple $100s and get a great running chassis, and then slowly upgrade over time, putting parts and stuff into it. And of course, there's a couple options from Yokomo. They have their MD 2.0, which is a fully hopped up carbon aluminum chassis, got all the aluminum arms, transmission, all those cool bits, and it's a great driving car. I had the MD 1.0 and I loved that car. It was great. You know, there comes a time where the cheaper chassis got nicer parts and felt better in my hands. Just one of those things where a lot of this is opinion, and a lot of it just takes time doing it over and over and figuring out what you like and what you're going to have the most fun with, because it is a hobby and it is something that we're not getting paid to do. We're just having fun playing with these toy cars. So keep that in mind. Also, if you guys haven't subscribed yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Only 20% of people who watch my videos are subscribed, so 80% of the people watching this right now are not subscribed. But if you find this information useful, or you want to see some other RC drift videos, definitely do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button, leave a comment, and catch you guys on the next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.